You're listening to the main event with Zach Gelb and Mike Zahn on WHIP.
Welcome back, everybody. You're tuned in to WHIP Radio in Philadelphia, Philly's #1 college radio station. 215-204-WHIP is our number if you want to talk with us. I'm Zach Gelb. He is Michael Zahn, taking you up until noon Eastern time, where the Temple Sports Hour will come your way. And I read an article after the Temple football victory, and it headlines this: Temple's big win, no big deal to ex-Owls felled by cuts. And it's written by Mike Sielski of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And there's a few things that we disagree about with this column, so we want to talk to Mike about it, and he's kind enough to give us a few minutes right now. Mike, thanks for a few minutes. How are you?
I'm doing great, Zach. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on. And there's been a lot of controversy about this article. There's been two takes to it. Some people really like it and support those athletes, and some people feel like that you left a few facts out. Take me through your thought process and why you decided to write this article at this time.
Well, for one thing, I think that giving some consideration to those athletes and coaches who were kind of left behind back in 2013 was only a natural thing to think of as Temple beat Penn State last Saturday. I waited a few days to write it because I didn't want that to be the immediate thing, to come after what was obviously a historic victory for Temple's football program. And but the fact is, it is newsworthy to wonder what some of these folks thought of the victory, and whether they had kind of turned the page on what happened in December 2013, or whether they were still harboring some bitterness. And the other thing is, I think it gets to the heart of what do you want a college athletic program to be? What's its mission supposed to be? And what's its mission supposed to be at Temple, which, let's face it, traditionally has not been a football powerhouse, is trying to turn itself into a respectable football program. And needless to say, I'm a little skeptical about whether that's going to work. So it just seemed kind of a natural thing to me to just make those phone calls and find out what those coaches and players were thinking about the big win.
Mike, obviously business is a big part of this, and I like to think I'm not an idiot. I get it. Every AD in the country wants a big-time football program, and to me, if they're not trying to build that big-time football program, they're not doing their job. But the one problem where I had in this article is, let's just say if I had no clue what Temple Athletics was, and I'm reading this article from the West Coast, I look at it, and it feels like that you put a large percentage, if not all the percentage of blame, on the Temple football team for this being cut, and you never explored in the article where this money actually went to, that $3 million saved, when in reality it went to all the programs. For example, that William Penn facility that they talked about in the annual Temple Athletics program will house men and women's soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, and track. They're having that East Park Canoe House being built, which will be home for Temple's crew and rowing. They refurbished and rebuilt all the locker rooms for every team in campus, and that includes the football team as well. They improved their Olympic sport locker room enhancements, sports medicine, Olympic strength and conditioning. McGonigal Hall was refurbished, and they put a big commitment into the student advising program for athletes. Why did you decide to leave out where that money went to in your article?
Well, a couple reasons. Number one, let me begin by saying I got an email from a Temple spokesman today, and he listed all those same sorts of things as where the money was going, and that's fine. But that doesn't bring back the 5 sports that ultimately were cut, and I'm not sure that the people who, carved out both playing careers and coaching careers at Temple would say to themselves, "Oh, okay, well, we have a stronger, whatever soccer program. That's nice, but why did it have to come at the expense of the baseball program? And where were the sacrifices that football made?" The other part that you left out and that I didn't mention either is that Temple got a very nice sum of money from Under Armour in an endorsement contract. Did that money go entirely to football? And if so, well, the cuts took up, $3 million of a $44 million athletic budget? As my colleague Bob Ford from the Inquirer wrote when the news broke, give me a pen and give me Temple's athletic budget, and I think I'll be able to squeeze $3 million out of there without having to cut 5 sports teams.
But also, it's a common practice, though, across NCAA athletics. Like, for example, Maryland made cuts, Towson made cuts, and in the AAC, excluding UConn, that has 24 teams still, and I don't know how long that number will be around, but every other team in the American Athletic Conference ranges in 16 to 19 athletic teams, and you quickly dismiss Temple's big claim of these cuts, which is being compliant to Title IX. It just comes off like you can understand how this article comes off a little bit that you have a vendetta against Temple football. I'm just curious, why didn't you bring up those statistics of that this has been a common practice in the NCAA, and you see a lot of teams cutting sports now, and one of the sports you mentioned is gymnastics. It kind of feels like it is a dying sport in NCAA athletics, and Temple kept it around for this long.
Well, number one, just because something is a common practice doesn't make it right. For one thing, I would argue that the entire college sports system is in need of a kind of values reevaluation at a lot of levels, and football is at the top of that list. And I would argue, too, that Temple's history in football, Temple's never been a football power. And so the idea that all of a sudden, by cutting teams that have been part of the fabric of the university's community and athletic community for as long as they've been is suddenly going to help make Temple a football power is a specious argument at best. As far as cutting sports to keep in line with other teams in the AAC, I don't know. I would have considered it a good thing that Temple offered as many sports as it did. And then we can get into a whole different discussion about whether Temple should be in the AAC to begin with, which it did specifically because it thought it was a better football conference. So let's not beat around the bush here. From a basketball standpoint, from any other sports sort of standpoint, Temple should not be in the ACC. It's not a geographical fit at all. And the idea that Temple should be pursuing that, like fighting to be a football power and looking for some kind of football conference to be a home in, I'd say is a specious argument at best. One final thing, I don't have any vendetta against Temple at all. If anything, I might come at this from the perspective of somebody who went to college. I went to LaSalle University, and I went to college that did not have any kind of football program at the time that I went there. LaSalle tried to add a football program at the 1AA non-scholarship level. My senior year, they eventually added it the fall after I graduated. It lasted 10 years, and it was disbanded. And I can tell you that not having a football team did not affect my college experience, my educational experience, one iota. And that's the reason people are supposed to be going to colleges and universities.
However, there's a lot of people on this campus that are really amped up about this victory, and they will say that, hey, that win will be a memory that will last with them for a very long time. And I think this Temple football team is gaining some serious momentum. They take down an SEC team last year. They beat Penn State to start off the football season, and I believe what Matt Rule is preaching. I want to just take you to one more thing in this article. You talk about all the teams that were get cut, and then you said they did so ostensibly to balance the athletic department's budget and remain in compliance with Title IX, but everyone knew the real motivation for the purge. The university wanted to augment its football program, wanted to become a power and the most powerful and lucrative of college sports, and to get there, the program's budget needed supplementing. Okay, so you basically quickly dismissed the Title IX claim where I showed you where some of the money went to. I'm just wondering, and I don't know if you did or you didn't, did you reach out for Temple for comment? Did you reach out to their athletic administration? And if so, why didn't you?
I did not, and you can make an argument that I probably should have. They would have given me some sort of statement, I'm sure. I would say, though, that the athletic director and the president's position on football and its ability to drive revenue has been a matter of public record since they came to Temple. My colleague Mike Jensen from the Inquirer did a humongous story on the president, Dr. Theopold and Kevin White, the athletic director, upon their arrival, and they made it clear throughout that story in their comments that football drives the financial train. And I personally am not somebody who looks at a college or university as a company or corporation. I don't look at it. I think this is not endemic to Temple. College presidents' primary job is to raise money. That's what they do. It's true at a place like LaSalle. It's true at a place like Penn State. It's true at a place like Temple. I think to a great extent that's ridiculous. The bubble here eventually is going to burst because what happens is these universities raise a ton of money in athletics or endowments or whatever the case may be, and students like you guys take out federal loans because you feel like you have to go to college, and in a lot of respects you do, and then what happens, these universities drive up the price of tuition to the point that a lot of people can't afford it, and the cycle keeps going and going and going, and college football is a big, big driver of that. And I personally would like to see the system stop, and I think it's silly for Temple, in a lot of respects, to try to kind of feed that beast, as it were.
We're talking to Mike Sielski, Philadelphia Inquirer columnist. And Mike, I'll admit I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. And you kept on mentioning how Temple doesn't have an elite football program and they're not a power football team. And you're even quoted as saying, never mind the 150 student athletes whom the trustees told, sorry, relative to football, your sports don't matter at all anymore. You don't think that's a bit harsh coming at specifically the football program? Because keep in mind, Zach earlier in this interview even mentioned where all the money was going, and it wasn't just to the football team.
Yeah, well, they could have taken the money that went to those other teams. They had that money anyway. Tell me why the sports were cut. Tell me why nothing from football was cut. Was anything from football trimmed at all?
Well, a big reason why these sports were cut was to be compliant with Title IX, and I believe that.
No, the softball team was not cut to be compliant with Title IX.
Yeah, but Mike, when you take a look at it, a lot of this money was put back into the other sports, and I'll go back to the common practice thing. It is a common practice.
My point is, they could have put the money into those sports if they had been willing to trim something from a football program that traditionally has not been good and has not raised revenue. Remember, you left out the part where football revenues fell by $4 million from 2012 to 2013. You're leaving out the part where at that crowd at Lincoln Financial Field on Saturday, the vast majority of people there were Penn State fans.
That's just wrong. I'm sorry, Mike. I was at the game. I don't know if you weren't, but I was at the game. I looked out from the press box, and I saw a sea of cherry and white. You didn't see that 4 years ago. And also in 2011, even though they did lose that money in revenue, they did host Penn State that year, and they still brought in a little over $1 million from that game. So you do. When was gymnastics bringing that in? They weren't.
So what is the point of a college or university? Is it to raise money, or is it to honor your promises to your student athletes and provide what's supposed to be a exceptional educational and in some cases athletic experience? And you guys can dance around this all you want, but people got left behind in those choices. That's fine. If Temple wants to make those choices to try to build its football program and try to raise money for the university, that's fine. But don't just sweep the people who got left behind under the rug, because Temple made promises to them too, and Temple broke them. And that's okay if you guys want a great football program. I don't think it's going to happen.
So even if you feel that way, Mike, which I understand, maybe we just have two different thinking processes, but not to degrade the other programs that got cut, but let's say, hypothetically speaking, Temple women's basketball beat Gino Auriemma and company, the women's UConn team on North Broad Street. Are you storying this article, Mike?
Well, no, I'm not, because Temple traditionally has had, number one, a fairly successful and respectable women's basketball program relative to its football program. And number two, you're not trying to drive revenue through the women's basketball program and so far failing in the way you have with the football program. And the football program is at any university is a behemoth, that outstrips virtually any other program. So, am I writing it then? No, because the university's president and athletic director, when they were hired, didn't say we're going to rely on football as a driver, or they didn't say we're going to rely on women's basketball as a driver of revenue for our department.
Mike Sielski joins us right now from the Philadelphia Inquirer, talking about his article that headlines Temple's big win, no big deal to ex-Owls felled by cuts. Mike, I just want to say this, because actually in my freshman year, my roommate was actually on one of these teams that got cut, and I feel awful for those student athletes that got cut, but I understand, to me, why the moves had to be made, and I understand that we're going to disagree about those things. However, you reached out to a lot of former coaches and a lot of former athletes. I'm just wondering, because I reached out to one last night, and he told me that he understood why these cuts were made, and he even went to that Temple-Penn State game and had a really good time, and it was a memorable college experience, even though, according to you, it comes at the expense of his team came at the expense of a Temple football program in this dream. When you talk to these athletes, did you come across any of them that really understood why these cuts were made and that didn't have any ill feelings towards the Temple athletics program?
I did not, but I did include a quote from Evan Eigner, the former Temple gymnast, in my column, in which he noted that he has a lot of friends who were on the gymnastics team who remained at Temple, did not transfer to other schools. Evan did, and he said that they are still gung-ho Temple. And I included that in the column. So if I found somebody who said this doesn't bother me, I'd have included it. I didn't find anybody who said that.
Wrapping up here with Mike Sielski, and on Wednesday's show, Zach and I had mentioned that the demise of the Big East was really catastrophic from our perspective because it was such a powerhouse basketball conference, but obviously the football didn't lead up to it. And you keep on mentioning how, well, you know, the ADs are running through football. What program isn't trying to have their football program be elite?
Well, they're all trying to make them good. My point is that the idea of universities becoming places to build football programs is not what colleges and universities are supposed to be about. And it's one thing that certain universities around this country are successful at it, such as Alabama or USC or places like that. That doesn't make what's happening any less corrupt or wrong or warped when it comes to the values of higher education. I mean, you guys really want Temple to be part of the kind of the NFL, NCAA cartel when it comes to, you know, college football? I mean, this really ought to be separated out from the university experience. And again, I admit my bias. I had a great 4 years at LaSalle University without a college football team. And it's an experience as an undergrad that I was wholly unfamiliar with. But if you look at the system, you know, I guess I'm coming at this from a different perspective. I'm not looking at this and saying a college football team is essential to the happiness and well-being of a university or its community or its students. I just don't feel that way.
Mike, I also want to point out this final line in your article. Damn right, if a university is willing to eliminate 5 sports to enhance its football program, then shouldn't that team be expected to beat even an opponent such as Penn State? How many games does Coach Matt Rule have to win this season to justify what the university did in December 2013? How many next season? What's the chemistry that balances this equation? To you, what is that number? Because I already think it is a success from what you had on Saturday. But how can this be viewed as a success ultimately in your mind? What does the football team have to do?
Football team has to keep winning and raise revenue so that the university can bring those sports back. That would make me pretty happy.
And I have to ask you this one final question, and we really do appreciate you coming on the show today as Mike Sielski joins us from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I got a photo. I got a lot of tweets about how a lot of Temple fans think you're beating a dead horse on this issue just because there wasn't a lot of new information in this article, and it just brings you back to 2 years ago and all the facts that we did know. Why don't you think you are beating a dead horse? How do you respond to that if someone was to put that question out there towards you?
Well, I think the fact that you guys beat Penn State, for one thing, is a new development. So it's a natural newsworthy thing in journalism to look at the opposite side of what almost everyone assumes to be a wonderful or glorious thing. Believe me, if I found that Skip Wilson or a gymnast or a former softball player saying, you know what, that's all in the past, it's all good now, they beat Penn State, that'd be fine. I wouldn't have drudged this up. But the fact is that this is still a bitter, and I have the emails to prove this, this is still a bitter pill that a lot of Temple alumni and fans are having a tough time swallowing. And, yeah, Saturday was great for North Broad Street. And celebrate all you want. It was a wonderful win. You have to feel great for Coach Rule and those kids. And I do. That's wonderful. That's why they came to Temple, was to win games like that. Okay, but they also came to get an education, and there were also a number of athletes, as many as 150 initially after the news came out in December 13, who also came to Temple to play their sports. They can't do it anymore. Keep that in mind. That's all I'm saying is keep that in mind.
Fair point, and I understand that, and it's unfortunate. It's never easy to cut those football teams, or to cut those teams at all, and they did value the scholarships. But, hey, I will say this, though. When I look at the article, the one thing I do like about it, Mike, is that my face is in the picture of all the reporters there. So I do like that, Mike.
Well, we try that. We try to grease the egos of anybody who might object to anything I write by putting their pictures alongside the column.
All right, Mike, we do appreciate it. I do read your work a lot, and I do like it. You know, we'll disagree on this article, but I do appreciate you coming on and trying to defend it. Great job out of you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
There's Mike Sielski joining us from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I see the phones are lighting up, so we will get to those guys on hold. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break. We'll get to everyone on hold. Hey, there's a lot going in that article. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. I'm sorry. I don't like the article. I don't like how he didn't report where any of the money went to. And, it comes off to me as very one-sided. And if I was someone on the West Coast that never knew what Temple football was, I would think they are the sole reason for these cuts being made. And hey, I said in the interview, I'll say it again, I'm not an idiot. I get it. Temple football wants a big football program, and every athletic director in the country wants a big football program. And that's a big part of it, is the business side of it. And I don't get how you write this article and not put those facts in and just so quickly dismiss the Title IX claim and then never reach out to Temple University for a comment. You just can't do that.
It's sloppy journalism. It really isn't. It isn't right. And I think at the end of the day, we are just seeing a column written that either was written just from a heart standpoint with not many facts, or just that it got through too many people. But all in all, we do appreciate him coming on board with us.
I usually like Mike's work. I just don't like this column.
Yeah. I think the most important part is that he tried to back it up, and I mentioned it in the interview. We're just going to agree to disagree. This is how he feels. We're not trying to convince him one way or another. You're not trying to convince him one way or another, and he's not trying to convince us. Just all in all, we're going to agree to disagree.